So, a couple of weeks ago, I made a video talking about the character of Bruno Madrigal from Encanto, and how, as a character and as a person, the dude really deserves better, right? His life kind of sucks, and a big part of this was a result of his relationship with his family, the Madrigal family. And this got me thinking about the family in general, and how they just kind of suck. Like, yeah, good one, Captain Obvious. That's the point of the film. They overcome generational trauma and grow stronger together, and they do good things for the community with their powers, yada yada yada. And yeah, I get that, I really do, but at the same time, they're just so bad. Like, come on now. I feel like the movie frames things to be like, ooh, Mirabel feels left out of her family, but it's all really just a bunch of misunderstandings and trauma bubbling up to the surface, and the family can overcome them with cooperation and communication. But I guess. I feel like the happy ending really does distract you from how bleak a lot of this stuff really was. And so today, I'm going to expose how terrible a lot of the family dynamics really were. And we'll start with Abuela, because she's the mother of all trauma. Like, this woman is just terrible. Terrible! And yes, I know her husband was brutally killed in front of her eyes, and she feels like her family has to keep serving their community in order to uphold their end of the bargain. But does that really justify all the terribleness? Does it really justify how bad she makes it for everybody in the family? I don't think so. I mean, let's just take a look. Okay, so when they get the magic house, it becomes clear that at some point, her little babies are going to get the powers of their own. And they do, and what do you know? They're really useful powers. One of her daughters, the mother of Mirabel, gets the power of healing food. Basically, whatever she cooks has super duper healing powers to an extreme degree. One daughter controls the weather with her emotions. And her only son, Bruno, he can make prophecies. All in all, a very useful set of powers. And you'd think, as a good parent, that she'd recognize the community is really going to start to depend on these kids. And honestly exploit them. And I mean, we literally see this. We see it with the way they talk about Bruno. They crap all over the dude and make him out to be this malicious person who ruins people's lives with his prophecies for his own sick gratification. The kind of person who gets a giggle out of going up to his own sister and ruining her wedding day by telling her that it's definitely going to rain. And obviously we know from the film, he's not like that. But everybody still just scapegoats his ass all day long and makes him seem awful. And you'd think that surely his mum would do something about it because she'd have to know what's going on. Because just look at her in the film. She's a force to be reckoned with. And yet she's letting the townsfolk bully him, blame him, scapegoat him, and just in general despise this poor dude. And even his own sister does it at times. Plus, he's so certain that his mum will react badly to future Mirabel destroying the house and the magic that he goes into hiding just to prevent that happening. In all honesty, the dude is a bit of a Chad. But it's not a good thing that he even thinks this about his own mum. And that it got to this point to begin with. And so yes, that's the first black mark against Abuela. But then remember this, we see that it's a family tradition, as in a tradition set up by her, and something that she pushes heavily as important to the family. But when you get your powers, you serve the town, you serve the community. I mean, look at Mirabel's mum, Julieta. Pretty much every scene she's in, she's making food, she's serving food. Not just for the family, but for the whole town. Imagine how hard she has to work from dawn till dusk to get this done, pretty much every single day. And how long do you reckon she's been at the grind for? I'd say it's likely since 5 years old. Damn, Alma. Have some chill. Plus, also, let's read between the lines on Pepper's power set, right? They kind of live in a rural township place, a village, and you'd have to assume that a big part of their society and their economy, their prosperity really, just revolves around farming and crops. And what do crops need? They need good weather conditions. They need sun and warmth and also rain. And so suddenly we have two major options here. Either Pepper is required to force herself to have different emotions, force herself to be happy or sad or whatever, which feels a bit unnatural and would likely be very difficult to do. Or, in my eyes, the more realistic option is that the townsfolk and her family would have to go out of their way to keep her happy for the most part almost all the time. Like in the We Don't Talk About Bruno song, her husband, who just wants to be involved with telling their niece about Bruno, gets yelled at by her for trying to help. And thus he has to placate her completely, calm her down. So already whenever she's angry we see, justified or not, you have to try to calm her or it's hurricane time. Similarly, when they need rain for their crops, the lakes, tanks, reservoirs, wells, whatever it would be, wouldn't they need to actively make her upset to prevent her happiness causing a sunny day? Obviously you wouldn't want to make her miserable, because that would be a hurricane, but you'd have to make her mildly annoyed to get that perfect drizzle. And since the valley does seem to be prosperous and plentiful, it feels like they have been carefully curating her mood this entire time, manipulating her emotions, which seems very, very terrible, if I'm being honest with you. Whew. And you'd have to assume that Alma's letting that happen, if not directly helping out, to make her emotions positive or negative, especially when she was a younger child. And I know, I'm reading into things here, but in my eyes, this makes sense and is a logical step. It's a logical conclusion to draw. But hey, the trauma she inflicts, or at the very least, the trauma that she lets play out, is not limited to her children. It spills over into the grandkids too. And we could sit here all day listing out every single tiny way in which these kids suffer, but we can summarize the awful. Remember at the start of the film, when Antonio needs Mirabel's comfort and support when facing the prospect of getting his powers? And so he reaches out for her hand and he wants her support. Why is the kid so frightened? Why does he need her? Because he's scared that he's going to share her fate. And as we see, her abuela hates on her all throughout the movie, whether it's overt or not. And this little boy, in his 5 years, has picked up on it to the extent that he's deeply afraid. He's not excited to get his powers like everybody else was. His elder sister has known the entire time that Bruno is still in the house, but obviously, bringing up his name is a big no-no. Her parents sing a whole song about how it's a bad idea to mention his name and why he sucks. And I'm pretty sure in the film itself, it's said that Alma reacts very badly whenever he gets mentioned. Imagine being so anxious about this guy that you just never mention that he's still in the walls, that you can still hear him, that you never feel confident or safe enough around your own family to talk about a guy you knew for a long time, your own uncle. Damn. Or maybe we should talk about how Louisa is literally working herself to death, always feeling like she has to look out for the whole family and carry the burdens of the whole community. We literally see her start to wear down during the film, and you can assume the poor woman, being 19, has been expected to use her super strength since she was 5 years old. 14 years, my god! Not to mention Isabella being pressured to get married, despite confiding to Mirabel that she doesn't even want to get married to this guy. Her gran is literally deciding her whole life, marrying her off like it's the Dark Ages. And she's only 21. And on top of that, she's not even allowed to explore the use of her powers overall, because as we know, Abuela expects her to be perfect at all times, the perfect princess to inspire the unwashed masses of Encanto. Oh, Alma, you have so much to answer for. A single sorry at the end of the movie does not cut the mustard. It doesn't settle the score. Hopefully Julietta's magical food can help with mental illness and stress disorders brought on by this horrible lifestyle she's instilled in the family for over 2 generations. 50 years of this shit. Damn it, Alma, cool your jets. And that's just the side characters, really. By far the worst victim's Mirabel. And obviously we can't just sit here and recite every single thing that goes wrong in her life either. Or every way that she's mistreated, not just by her abuela, but by everybody. And obviously she becomes the new black sheep of the family, the fresh scapegoat after Bruno leaves, and she is left with no powers. She gets shat all over. And yeah, that gets resolved in the film, I guess, but there are elements that are brushed past. Elements that are pretty troubling, she ends up being forced to share the nursery room with a baby, because apparently they can't just build an extra room for her or repurpose an old room. Damn, that is ice cold. Plus, there's a parenting fail here from both Mirabel's parents and Antonio's, as she, a child, would end up being one of his primary carers. Who is little Antonio going to call for in the night if he's scared, if he needs to pee, if he's hungry, he needs a drink? Mirabel, of course, his cousin who's only 10 years older than him and who sleeps across the room. How could any of the adults let this play out? Plus, what happens when her sisters and cousins get married eventually and have children perhaps? Does she still have to bunk in with the kids in the nursery, even as she gets older and older? What if she gets married? All the other spouses seem like they come to live in casita. That's how it's worked so far, and thus it seems likely to keep working like that. After all, as more people get older, they get new rooms, they get their powers, the house will grow. It's part of the magic. So does Mirabel therefore move her family into the nursery room, hope her children get powers so they get spaces of their own? Or is she expected to leave the family home? To me, that feels like the likely expectation, and honestly, Abuela aside for a moment, her parents too, they don't cop enough shit about any of this. And I get that they were manipulated and abused too, but when you have kids, the buck stops with you. So they definitely have a lot of responsibility in this as well. Be better, damn it. And then at the end, it's just all happy families. Yeah, right. This family needs therapy. And then the therapist is going to need therapy. You ain't just going to get over everything that this family's put itself through in the course of a single day with a single sorry. And quite frankly, I don't think Abuela gets enough shit for the massive generational trauma that she single-handedly inflicted on everybody. So hopefully, I've helped settle that score a little bit. But of course, these have all just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of the Madrigal family? Do you think I'm right? A truly toxic cesspit? Or do you think maybe I'm reading too much into things? Blowing things way out of proportion? I really am curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.